The situation leaves the county number 44 in a bittersweet mood, with all eyes and ears waiting with bated breath for the election outcome and eventually the bailed ruling for the governor. Vote counting began slightly over an hour ago and is expected to be completed before midnight. There are 6 candidates in the race, but ODM's Achilo Ayako and the Federal Party of Kenya's Eddie Okech are the frontrunners. Low voter turnout was recorded in the morning before voters increased, albeit marginally in the afternoon. Well, on the short night, I have a political strategist, Hesbon Owila, and later on a lawyer, Mwana Hosea, who will be putting this into context for us. Hesbon, good evening. Many thanks for joining us on the big story tonight. 6 candidates cleared by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, but former Cabinet Minister Achilo Ayako from the ODM party and FBK's Eddie Okech seem to be taking the lead here. What is your take on how the election was conducted today?
Good evening, Michelle. I think the election is panning out to be what we expected it to be. It was definitely going to be a two-horse race between the Honorable Achilo Ayako and Eddie Okech. And that is exactly what is happening. And it's actually interesting to note that in as much as we thought Eddie would give Honorable Achilo Ayako a run for his money, it appears that even in those strongholds where we were expecting a tight race between the two, I think there's a big gulf. There are indications that there's a big gulf between Honorable Achilo Ayako and Eddie Okech, of course, in favor of Honorable Achilo Ayako. And that probably talks to the strength of the party and the belief that people have in the party, and specifically ODM.
All right, let's talk about this ODM's decision that to give a direct nomination, a direct ticket to Achilo Ayako, something that even the governor, Migori Governor Okello, has openly opposed there. He's actually seen as the main backer of FPK's Eddie Okech. But what would that direct nomination mean when you couple it with the outcome of this by-election tonight?
Well, I think if you situate it broadly, you'd basically understand that, I mean, the governor was not entirely opposed to the direct nomination. Mm-hmm. He basically had issues with the person who ended up getting the direct nomination. Right. And, ODM as a party, if you look at its party structures, its constitution and regulations on nomination, it actually provides for direct nomination. And it's interesting that even the people who participated in the whole process of direct nomination within the party and submitted their papers, including Eddie, actually were doing that knowing that the process was within the framework of the party, and most of them were hopeful that the party would settle on them. And therefore, you'd be a lot more critical of folks who believed in the process for as long as they thought the process was going to favor them. And then the process turned out, to have favored Honorable Achilo Ayako. A few of them bolted out. We may not, as members of a political party, even if you have a problem, with the outcome of a process, the belief in the process in itself should have informed, the choices that they made in the aftermath of Achilo Ayako having been given that ticket. So you look at Eddie, I think he has fought a good fight. He's definitely, gonna make a name for himself, not necessarily win, but he will definitely have to deal with the consequences of having some of his supporters hit on the political party ODM. But for the governor, I would say that for him, it was not so much about the process as it is about the fact that the process settled on Honorable Achilo Ayako.
And the fact that the governor, of course, something that hasn't been confirmed yet, but is seen to be supporting Eddie Okech from the Federal Party of Kenya, which is the same party, remember, that took Okello to power back in 2013. But like you mentioned earlier, the vote today seems to be in favor of Achilo Ayako, although vote counting is still going on. What then would that mean for the governor, because it is suspected that his supporters have also thrown their weight behind Eddie Okech? If Eddie Okech does not come on top here, what does that mean for the position of Okello in Migori politics?
Well, I think in a sense you'd say that a number of people perceived Eddie Okech to have been having the support of the governor, not necessarily because the governor believed in Eddie Oketch, but because the governor was probably anti-Honorable Chila Yako. And of course, this defeat, though it was expected, does not augur well with the clout of the governor. You'd probably think that, his fight against the political party and, the kind of narrative that he wanted to come up with as, a kingpin in South Nyanza region, is probably going to be deflated big time. But I don't think that is as bad as what has happened to him in this Sharon's death saga, because I think his fate was sealed the moment his name was associated with that, the moment he was arraigned in a court of law, and the fact that he's still, in a situation where we cannot tell whether he will get out of this case or he will be convicted, and whether he gets out or not, I think from a political communication point of view, he has given anyone who would want to, rival him for any other position or for political clout enough ammunition to finish him going forward.
All right. Well, voter apathy was also reported for the better part of the day in this election. And although not new, really, when it comes to by-elections, could this also have been influenced by the tense situation in the Migori political scene?
Well, I think there are two things about the low voter turnout. One is voter apathy. There's a sense in which a number of voters think that a by-election is almost always, a non-issue. It is not something they need to pay attention so much to. And the fact that it is not even a public holiday like a national, the national election means that not many people would sacrifice what they do every day to go and vote. And then secondly, you also have this idea, among the people of Migori that once somebody has the ODM ticket, they are probably, home and dry. And you'd actually think that there are a number of people who didn't go voting because they knew that Honorable Chila Yako was going to win. And then there's the third issue of, there are Migorians who live out of Migori, folks who work here in Nairobi, and this is a Monday, it's a working day. So there are a number of voters who vote in Migori but don't live in Migori who didn't make that journey. And therefore, you'd probably use these three instances to explain the low voter turnout. I wouldn't say that it is entirely voter apathy, because voter apathy is when people are in a position to go and vote. They have the voter's card, they have the time, and they just decide not to go and vote. I think some of us did not just decide not to go and vote, but we are caught in a situation where you look at the pros and cons of making the journey to Migori, leave what you're supposed to do, and you just weigh the odds and decide that it will still be an election.
All right. The tense campaigns that are leading up to these by-elections also laid the ground for the continued war of words between opposition leader Raila Odinga and Deputy President William Ruto, who was also said to be supporting Eddie Oketch. Or Chilo Ayako, they're said to be a darling of ODM leader Raila Odinga. What would either outcome of this election mean for the position of the opposition, ODM specifically, in Migori County?
Well, I think by and large, you'd probably say that it basically cements the position of ODM and the Right Honorable Raila Odinga as, the ultimate kingpin in that region, and that is beyond doubt. The fact that even the areas where we expected Eddie, areas like Kuria East and Kuria West, and intelligence from the ground are indicating that, Ochilo is leading all the way. Apart from one or two, polling station, tells you that there's a way in which ODM and the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga has asserted himself. Because you look at the number of votes he garnered in the last general election, the August 8th, those two Kuria constituencies, he didn't perform well. If anything, Jubilee took the day. But you look at how the voting is taking place, and the number of votes that have trickled in, you can actually say that it seems like there is a lot more ground that ODM has gained. Secondly, you'd also understand that if you are a prominent political candidate in any part of Luo Nyanza and you come out strongly like Eddie came, you're probably going to be branded, a project of the enemy. And I think the person who is perceived to be the biggest rival to the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga is William Ruto. So whether it is true or not that he was funding Eddie Okech, I think that was the ammunition that was used to, propagate some sort of propaganda that Eddie is a project of the deputy president. And I think to some extent, the amount of money that, he oiled his election with gave credence to some of those propaganda.
All right. Well, the vote counting on one hand continues in Migori County, and on the other hand, it's 5 more days behind bars for Migori Governor Okoth Obado there. What next after tonight's outcome of this by-election? Because the residents of Migori, voters in Migori County, are still in limbo about what happens next when it comes to the governor.
Well, I think we can only speculate about the outcome of the court process, because, I mean, that is a due process of the law, and there's nothing we can say about it. We cannot even preempt whether, it's going to end one way or the other. But what I know is that the clout that the governor had in Migori will increasingly, wane with the longer period he takes behind bars, To a large extent, this election wouldn't have taken the shape that it's taking if the governor was in Migori. I mean, we'd be talking about a totally different contest, So I would say that, it's just very interesting that if the governor is not going to end up, serving his term to full, Migori is going to have a very interesting, kind of political dispensation, because the deputy governor is from Kuria. He's essentially a Kurian. Because Migori is a very cosmopolitan county, it gives a very interesting and refreshing, political dispensation, because then we're going to have very different dynamics, a new way of doing things. I think for the last few years, we've had a very powerful clout around the office of the governor, and the governor himself has been very powerful. And with his exit, you'd want to assume that that kind of power probably will spread, and you can only wish for the best.
All right. Well, let's talk about the entire electoral process here. Migori County is largely known as an election hotspot. It was expected then that election campaigns leading up to this by-election would be marred by violence orchestrated by supporters of either of the candidates in this election. What is your take on how the process went?
I think there's a misconception that Migori is a hotbed of political violence. On the contrary, I'll tell you, I've lived in Migori. I'm Migori through and through. If you ask me anything about Migori, I'll tell you that the most important and the most critical thing about the people of Migori is that they are politically conscious, and they're very passionate about the political process, and to a large extent, they actually evaluate politicians on issues and not necessarily on political parties. You remember in 2013, Governor Okoth Obado won on a PDP ticket. It was actually not the party that Eddie Okech is vying on, but it was PDP, or Omingo Magara's party. And he won. And he won against a scholar, professor who had the ODM ticket.
Right.
Now, today you look at the political scenario in Migori. I come from Suna East. My MP is an ODM MP. Suna West, that is just across, has an independent member of parliament, Honorable Peter Masara. So those are the dynamics of politics in Migori. And because sometimes when politics becomes a little bit emotive, just spots here and there, are escalated to portray Migori in a way that Migori is not. I would actually say that a few of the violent incidences in Migori, and the fact that when we were protesting against the second election on August 26 last year, we were a bit vocal in our protest, gave Migori an image that is not right. if I may say.
All right. But I mean, Hezbollah, a county can only handle so much, and just revisiting the wars that the top leaders of Migori County are facing there, a governor behind bars with the 2 murder charges leveled against him. Of course, it is a court process that we continue to see unveiling. The electorate, they're going ahead to choose a new senator. The outcome will be announced later tonight. But a county can really only take so much. Do you perhaps sense an air of voter apathy because of an electorate, or a leadership rather, that is marred with questions of integrity?
I mean, yeah, you'd say that in a sense that a lot of what Governor Okoth Obado is accused of, and of course charged with in a court of law, I would say he's not been charged, but a lot of things that he's likely to be charged with in a court of law, I mean, those 2 murder cases, actually been associated with a number of politicians in Migori, a few people have actually intimated that some of the senatorial candidates, probably have issues close to what the governor has been accused of, or they've been associated with those issues in the past. And you'd say that there is a sense in which a few voters might have thought, I mean, the political class is a colors class, and the whole process of voting or choosing one among the many of them is not something that they want to be party to. You can actually make a case for that it has not painted the political leadership in Migori in any glory, and probably a few voters just decided to take a walk rather than go and vote.
All right, let's bring in lawyer Manuel Jose, also joining us on the big story tonight. Thank you for your time, Jose. Let's talk about this by-election, an electorate in limbo, a governor behind bars for 5 more days. Where does the law begin and end in this Migori County issue?
Thank you, Michelle, and I'm sorry for coming late. I think it's an interesting situation that we're having as a country. And a coincidence, we're having a Senate, we're having electorates of Migori County going into an election. At the same time, we're having their governor spending the night in prison cells because of criminal charges. I think it's an interesting situation, but I first want to thank the people of Migori County for turning up, even though they didn't turn up in large numbers to exercise their right to vote for their senator, and also commend the job that the IEBC has done to ensure that the process goes through as it's required. Having said that, I think it's an interesting situation, considering that the governor himself had interest in the senatorial seat. At the same time, his the ODM party had their own interest by fronting different candidates. So I guess it's one situation that has happened for the first time in our country, where we are having an election in a county where the governor is facing charges, and is also his liberty has been deprived by virtue of the fact that he has not been granted the right to bail and bond terms based on the charges facing him.
Well, and this by-election comes in the wake of calls for a referendum in the country. Proponents of that same referendum say reforms in the electoral process are part of what informed the need for a referendum. Are we perhaps supposed to learn something from this by-election, the manner it was conducted, and perhaps inform the decision for a referendum?
I think most political players will view this by-election as a center stage for the referendum because we have different views as to whether we need to have a referendum or not. There is a political, side of politicians who are saying we do not need a referendum at this stage, and there is another group that actually believes that we need a referendum for purposes of ensuring that we have a proper constitution that belongs to the people. My personal views are that those who are opposing the referendum itself are looking at it from the political point of view and succession politics. if you monitor and see the individuals, especially in the political space, who are opposing the referendum, are either connected to certain political parties or certain political sides. And so I think we need to focus the debate on referendum on issues and not whether whose interest the same is supposed to be front. And I believe that considering that IEBC and the issue of whether they have capacity to hold a referendum, considering that some of it's not properly constituted in terms of its commissioners, I think the Migori by-election is a pace set as to whether they have that capacity, at the same time to whether they can conduct a proper referendum as required by the law.
All right.
So, yeah.
So the numbers in Migori tonight will go either in favor of FPK candidate Eddie Okech or in favor of ODM candidate Ochilo Ayako. That is a decision that will be confirmed tonight. But the question is, what next for the 388,000 voters in Migori County when it come Friday, when the bail hearing there for Kothobado is to be determined. Like I said, it is an electorate in limbo in terms of are they to prepare for another by-election in the county?
I think the Constitution is very clear as to when a governor is facing situations of this kind. Article 181 provides for the requirements that must be met for purposes of removal of a governor from office. I think the people of Migori County will not be subjected to another by-election in any time soon, because when a person has violated the requirement, doesn't have the capacity to be in office, if Obado is denied bail or if he is impeached as per the requirements under Article 181, then what will happen is that the deputy governor will take over the leadership of the county as the duly elected governor for the remainder of that period. For purposes of ensuring that the county is run. So I don't think whether the people of Migori will be subjected to another election. And this situation that is facing Obado boils down to leadership and integrity, and as to whether the county government or the county assembly of Migori will actually exercise its powers to actually entertain an impeachment process. And there's also the question as to whether, the governor still has influence of the county assembly itself for purposes of actually derailing that process, if at all it's presented to the county, to the MCAs and the members of the county assembly. So it's a situation that we will only wait and see how it unfolds. If the court denies him the right to bail and bond terms, then from there we will know whether he will really still run office, or rather hold that office and keep representing the people of Migori as their governor.
All right, and we keep keeping tabs on that come Friday this week. Hezbollah, let me get your final comments on the same. And as with every election, FPK candidate Eddie Okech has already alleged that there was corruption, bribery in this election. But your last comments on the limbo that the electorate in Migori finds itself tonight.
Yeah, I think there have been allegations of voter bribery, corruption, and intimidation of voters. And it's interesting that both sides, of the contesting parties have had such allegations. And what you are looking at is, do all these malpractices amount to, a big difference in terms of who is gonna win? I would say that those are dotted incidences, and from where I see it and from the intelligence I have from the ground, I think the will of the people of Migori has been expressed, and it is only important that we wait for the outcome of the tallying. and we support whoever is elected the senator of Migori and move forward.
All right, well, many thanks for speaking to us, gentlemen. Political analyst Ben Oluoch and lawyer Manuel Jose, as all eyes and ears tonight on Migori County as they elect a new senator who will be replacing the late Senator Ben Oluoch Okello. And that is a big story tonight. Many thanks for watching. My name is Michelle Ngeleo Diambo. Our guests in studio tonight, Ben Oluoch and Manuel Jose. The big story ends there tonight. KTN Prime is up next with Akisa Wandera.